Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the start of session grade centre information session. This session is an informal conversation that we hope will help you become familiar with your grade centre and how it works within your R2 sites. We'll start with an acknowledgement of country. We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri, Ngunnawal, Gundungurra and Biripi peoples of Australia, who are the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which Charles Sturt University's campuses are located, and pay respect to their elders, past and present. I'm going to hand over to Matt now, so he can start the conversation and answer, and we'll both answer questions at the end. There's, and I'll send through, put in the chat links that might be beneficial to you at a later date. There you go, Matt, all yours.
Thanks, Sharon. So yeah, it'll be quite informal session. We've only got a couple of people joining us. So yeah, these are quickly the topics that we'll go through today. We'll probably jump around a bit, so it sort of because they tend to flow one from each other or move around a little bit. So yeah, we'll jump into it. So the first, well, I guess we're talking about start of session and making sure your grade centres look healthy and ready to go for the session. So there's quite a few, well, there's some checks we need to go through to make sure that it is all set up and configured correctly. So the first thing we'd like to do is just get a copy of your grade centre before you make any changes. This is for obvious reasons. If something happens throughout the session, or you delete a column, or you need to refer back, and then we like to grab a copy of the grade centre. So I'm actually working on a live production site because I've accidentally deleted my test site that I usually do these sessions on, so I'll need to be a little bit careful. So the first thing we want to look at is we want to download the grade centre. We just go into the bottom here, subject management, grade centre, and the full grade centre. And to download the grade centre, it's downloadable. Actually, I'll make this a little bit bigger so it's easy to see. So with the upload download button here under the full grade centre, we just click on download. And we can just leave the default options in here and click on submit at the bottom. And click on the download button. And this will download an Excel spreadsheet. And in here, you'll see all the columns and the data that's in the grade centre, from the student information to the assessment items. And if we were further on into the session, we'd have some marks in here from the assessments. So it's always good to grab a copy of this, and even throughout the session, as you make changes to the grade centre, before you make any changes, it's good just to grab it. It only takes sort of 10 seconds, and it's always good to have a backup just in case anything goes wrong. Now, the first thing I want to discuss, which I haven't brought up before, I guess at the start of session, I guess this session we've had quite a few issues with merging sites. So in some cases, you know, staff members like to merge 2 or more sites together, so they're in the one. So you don't have to run 3 different subject sites when all the assessments are the same and all the content's the same. So just on that, when you do need to merge sites, I highly recommend doing it at the very start of the session before any of the subject sites have been modified at all. So they're completely blank with content, so no imports have been done from the previous session, because when you merge a site, the grade centres have to be identical. And if you start making changes to the grade centre in one of the sites or do an import from a previous session, which can import grade centre columns, then the merge will fail. And it takes quite a lot of time and energy to fix the grade centres after changes have been made so we can successfully do the merge. So yeah, if you do intend on merging your sites for the session, please do it before any content or any imports or any data has been imported into the site at all. Makes our life a lot easier, and it's just been a particular problem this session for some reason. So
Matt, I know why that happened was a problem for us, because like the outlines need to be published before you can merge, and they're making sort of like, you know, amendments to them, and once you're publishing and they see things, you know, it becomes another version and all that sort of thing. So
yeah,
trying to get people to hold off or making sure that everything's right and then publish your outlines and then merge sort of thing. So
yeah. Sorry, I should have said that. The
another
subject
lesson for
outlines.
me, sorry.
Yeah, the subject outline.
I tell Matt, yeah, it was me.
Yeah.
So Matt,
before,
can I just, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to ask a question around the publication of the outlines and the subject outline tool item. So does that, if it's been published quite a few times, subject outline tool item gets updated, or is there's just more columns, or how does that work?
well, it depends what's actually been modified in the subject outline. So to merge the sites initially, the subject outline has to be published for each of the sites that you want to merge, and they have to be identical. So the same assessments, the assessment values, the due dates, the whole lot. So if you're cloning your subject outlines in the subject outline tool, then you should be okay, but they do need to be identical, and the subject outline has to be published for every site before they can be merged.
So best if it's published and it's just the shell outlines, isn't it? So basically, you're looking
correct.
to have your outline published for each of the sites, and you still have your shell Interact 2 site, and then that's the best way to go about it. Is that right, Matt? Because then you have to work on one site anyway. So you import into one site and one site only.
Correct. Because if you import into one and not the others that you want to merge, then yeah, they won't merge, and then you've got to go back and make them the same again. So yeah, it's just a lot of work that doesn't need to be done. And I know that, you know, staff members like to get in early before session and get a jump start, but that does cause problems in some circumstances.
The Turnitin portals also cause some problems if they're imported as well, and if they're set up before the subject outline is published.
Correct. So
we've
seen a lot of issues this session where the Turnitin assessment items have been created in the parent site, but before the merge, or what will be the parent site, but not in what will be the child subjects. And so obviously Turnitin creates grade centre columns, and if they haven't been created in what will be the child subject sites, then the merge won't happen. So it's better off to merge the sites first and then do the Turnitin process, and then that'll push the grade centre column to the parent site, and that's all you need, if that makes sense. So with your grade centres, and we'll ignore that one. Good, I'll close both of them.
So you've downloaded it, Matt? Yeah.
Yeah, I've downloaded the grade centre.
Okay, so we're up to the subject outline. Yep.
Seem to be on the go slow today for some reason.
Yes, indeed. Huh.
Okay, so the subject outline needs to be published in the subject outline tool. And once that's done, then you'll see the subject outline is available in the Interact 2 site. So here you can see exactly what assessment items have been set up for the subject, dates, the assessment amount of the total assessments, so 10, 10, 20 and 60, and they all add up to 100%. And it also outlines the type of submission that the assessment is using. So this could be a Interact 2 journal or quiz, or East submission, or Turnitin. So there's quite a few different options there on what type of assessment submission or type it is. So what we want to check in particular with the subject outline, so every one of these assessment items should have a matching or corresponding grade centre column. So if we go into the grade centre, so we can see in here we've got assignment 1, assignment 2, assignment 1, assignment 2, and if you hover over them, if you keep your eye up here next to grade information bar, if you hover over the top, you can see very quickly the column and the possible points that it's out of and how many submissions have been made. So we can have a look at online test is out of 10, assignment is out of 10, assignment 2 is out of 20. And remember that you can scroll horizontally, which a lot of people overlook and think the columns have been deleted, but yeah, you can just scroll sideways and you can see more of the columns here. And online quiz is possible points of 5. So just need to go through and make sure that each of these assessment items have a corresponding grade centre column in here. And because of this scenario that I've lost my normal site that I use, these are not adding up at all. So this site actually does have a problem. So if we can see that this is out of 10, out of 10, out of 20, so that's a total of 40. Final example. Okay, no, I'm incorrect, and that's 60. So that is a total out of 100. So the next two columns here, we can see the cumulative mark and the calculated grade. So the cumulative mark takes the 4 assessment items in this scenario. So these 4, and then add it up to the mark out of 100. So we've got 60, 20 is 80, 10 and 10. Now to go into and double check what the cumulative mark is actually adding up, we can drop on the chevron drop down and go into edit column information. If we scroll down, we'll be able to see so what to include in the total. So there's a list here of all the different columns in the grade center, assessment items and non-assessment items. So we can see here that the 4 have been correctly included, the 4 assessments, which add up to 100. So if you want to remove one that shouldn't be in there, you can just click on the red cross and then click on submit. Or if you need to put one in, you can highlight it and then click on the arrow button, and that'll move it across and put it in the list, and then click on submit, and that'll update the which columns that are adding up to the cumulative mark. And then the calculated grade is then based on whatever mark is in here. So in this scenario here, because we don't have any marks tallied up, they're all set as failed, but obviously at the end of the session, when these 4 have values in it, the cumulative mark, could be 65, which is a credit, or whatever the mark is, it'll then automatically update the calculated grade, and it's the calculated grade and the administrative override that is sent to Banner at the end of the session when the grade transfers complete. So that's the subject outline and verifying the columns that are in the grade center that should match the subject outline.
You're in that grade center that you just had up, Matt, there were duplicate columns there, so you could probably show us how to work with those from that grade center, if that's okay.
So another way, obviously this view is a bit hard to work with, this horizontal scrolling, because it's hard to sort of get an overview. So if you go up to manage and select column organization, this will actually give you a much easier overview of the grade center and the columns. So you can see here that these are all representative of a column, the due dates if it has one, and you can see the points possible. So we can see here the value of each assessment item, 10, 10, 20, 60, and they all add up to 100. Now here, so we've got online tests and online quiz 1. So we don't actually have a...
No, sorry, Matt, I thought it was duplicated, but it's not.
Yeah, that's okay. We can certainly make one and then remove it.
The columns that I assumed were duplicated, they're not included in the cumulative total. They're perhaps a quiz that's not graded for this particular subject. And I noticed that his attendance column is basically just exactly that. He's marking people for attending. He's seeing whether people are attending, but they're not included in the cumulative mark.
So yeah, you may have a scenario where you have, I guess before we get actually to renaming it, grade center columns should all have distinct and unique names. It can be very confusing if you have 2 final exams named exactly the same, and it'll actually come up in the grade center health report, which runs checks over your grade centers if you have 2 columns of the same name. So this tends to happen a lot if a subject site has been copied from the previous session. depending on how that's done or what's selected in that import. It can bring the assessments over as well, which will create grade centre columns. So if this final exam was in the previous session and someone imported it, then we could have 2 final exams. Now, if this does happen, we need to, we try not to delete columns just in case, because it's a lot easier to fix any issues if they're just renamed and hidden rather than deleting. So in this case, we've got final exam here, final exam here. We know this one was imported or for whatever reason was created, but we don't want it. So what we tend to do is rename it and then hide it. So it basically disappears, but it's still there if we need to get it back. So on the drop down, if we want to rename it, we go back into edit column information. And in here, we can typically just put in a dash and remove. So we know what it was originally called, but it's also obvious that we don't need it. And now here you can see it's dash remove. So it makes it very obvious which one we don't want. And now we want to remove it from this view. So we can then hide from instructor view. And now you can see it's gone from this view. So you no longer sort of get confused. But if we go back into manage and then back into column organization into this other view, we can see it's still there with our changed name, but it's hidden from view. So from that normal view, you can't see it, but in here you can if you ever need to retrieve it. So we can just highlight that, click on show, click on submit, and then that'll show it again.
That hiding from instructor view as opposed to hiding from students.
Yep.
It is entirely different. You take it from there, Matt. Yeah.
Yep. So this, the red arrow through the grey dot on the columns, if that red line is displayed, it means that it is not visible to students. So you can see there in that pop-up, not visible to users. So as the academic and instructor of the site, you can see it. But if that red line's through, then the student cannot see it. So if we want to turn it on so students can see it, you'll see this hide from students on off. So it's just a toggle switch. So if we click on that, then that is now displayed and is displayed to students. You can click it again and that's now turned off. Now, there is one scenario where you can get into trouble, and that's if, and we'll use this one as an example. So online quiz 1 does not have that icon, so it is visible to students. However, you can still hide it from the instructor view. And if we do that, then you as an instructor now cannot see it, it's disappeared, but the students can. So obviously out of sight, out of mind, you may think that it's invisible to everyone or hidden from everyone, but it's still available to students, but you can't see it. So if we go back into column organization, it's there, but hidden, but it's available to students. So yeah, you can just get caught out there that you may think it's not visible because you can't see it, but it can still be visible to students.
Matt, we've got a question from Jane, and it said, I found last session that when the Turnitin release occurred, the students can see this and their grade. Do the Turnitin columns not behave the same as the I2 columns?
That is a good question. I wasn't
Turnitin.
aware.
Yeah, the Turnitin columns default to visible to students as soon as you set them up. So you
Right,
have to
okay.
edit it
So,
when you set it up to make it non-visible, and you can do that either through the grade center or in the edit section where you set up the Turnitin portal.
Oh, so
Even though I had it with the arrow through it like that, the students could still see their grade once the Turnitin released the release date and time of the assessment task to be
Yes.
returned to the students. As soon as that came up, they could see their grade, even though I had the red arrow through the box.
so you must have to set that in your portal, Jane, as well.
Yeah, that's not in your grade center portal. That comes from your Turnitin feedback.
Yeah,
Your Turnitin feedback date needs to be set back.
Yeah, no, that was fine, and it was appropriately, the 15-day release, whatever the time was. But as soon as I did that, they could see their grade center grade release.
Mark.
They could see their mark from this grade column. Yep.
Really?
Yep.
From Turnitin, I think it is.
Yeah, so
It's from Turnitin.
Yeah, I'll do some testing on that. If Turnitin portal made it available, and it still had the red line here, then it would not be showing this column regardless. But having said that, I'll do some testing anyway, just to confirm that, and I can get back to you.
That'd be great, Matt. Thanks.
Yeah. Matt, I just noticed with this one, you know how we've got the duplicate columns, or they're not duplicate, but the online quiz for these assessments. See on the left-hand side under assessment, online quiz 1 is actually probably the one that's linked, not the online test, which is actually in the cumulative mark.
Correct.
It's also,
And you can check that by, if you have the option to delete a column, then this column is not linked to an Interact2 quiz or test. So any marks would have to be manually inputted, where if we go to this online quiz, there is no delete column. So we know this one is actually the correct one that's linked to the I2 quiz. So that's something, I'm not going to do it here because this is a live site, but that is definitely a good pickup, that the one that is in the cumulative mark is the on.
Because otherwise I'll have to do it for you. So you might as well do it, Matt, right now. I'll manage that one otherwise.
All right.
that'll lead us into moving columns around anyway.
So this is real world stuff here. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's great to know that the one that isn't linked has a delete function, whereas the other one just has hide from instructor view. That's really good to know.
Yeah, that's the quick and easy way to see if it's actually linked to a.
Matt's just going to move the columns now to make them sit where they should be. Is that what you're doing, Matt?
Yep. So that one we've just hidden is up here, and the real one's actually down the bottom here. So just for readability and ease for staff, we can just click and drag this one up. So it's now in the right spot, and click on submit. So you do have to click submit for it to stick. You can see that one in
with
here
the
now.
hiding of columns, hiding from instructor view so that they go into that column organisation section of Grade Centre. If that's been done as Matt spoke about earlier, if that's been done in a parent site and not done in a child site, and you can't see the columns, you will have trouble merging, because the hidden columns are also looked at when the subject is being merged. That's correct, isn't it, Matt?
Yep. So the merge site doesn't care if it's hidden or not. That it takes all the columns into consideration when trying to merge.
So anything that's done in one site needs to be done in another.
Yep. So now we remove the other one, and we now want to use this one. The cumulative mark is not taking this one into consideration. It's taking the one we've hidden into consideration. So we want to go to edit column information. And you can see here that it's automatically updated it with the remove name that I put in. So we want to delete that. And we know that online quiz 1 is the correct one. So we want to put that one across and click submit. Now if we hover over that, it's 95, which is incorrect.
Might be
Okay.
that might be the mark on your quiz, Matt.
So yeah, this quiz has been obviously set up to be out of 5 rather than out of 10. So I'll leave that up to you. And this is sort of the scenario where you probably do have 2 columns for the same thing. So you need one to actually scale it. Because if we have a look at the online test, it's actually 10%. But this quiz has been created and it's only out of 5. So work needs to be done to scale it. So you might actually, we can do it while we're here. So because of this, there will be manual work required. So if we show this, and I'll move it one down.
And what Matt's doing now very quickly is he's moving columns to where they should be and unhiding. You've just unhidden the column that you hid, didn't you, Matt?
Yep.
So that he can scale the mark that's out of 5 up to 10. So you would download the Grade Center and do that in Excel. But that's a whole new ball game, that one. So we probably won't touch on that today.
Yep.
There is information that I put in the chat that will, like Grade Center information in the I2 Help and Support site, that will take you to that. And that it's a step-by-step process, but it is an involved process, that one. Or you can put in SRS, a show or request system, and we will help you.
Yep. So just to clarify what's going on here, this quiz is out of 5. So when it's automatically graded, it'll always be a mark out of 5, but the assessment item overall is out of 10 for the whole session. So then we can create another column where it needs to be manually updated. So fundamentally, or basically multiply it by 2 to get a mark out of 10. But now we need to also change the cumulative mark back to the 1 out of 10. So we are going around circles here because that quiz.
I don't even know that you really do need to do that, Matt. Sorry, I've just had a quick look and I reckon that because all those questions were 0.25, I'll have to get in touch with the lecturer.
Oh, you want to update the
0.25. I'm guessing that they're going to allocate each of those questions worth half a point instead of 0.25.
Okay, all right.
What I'm thinking. So you can leave it and I can have a little go at that one afterwards. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
But that was really good anyway, because it showed us some of the scenarios that you guys might come across in your subjects anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So it was great.
Real world problems.
Yep.
You think sometimes it's a quick fix, but there's always a little bit extra.
Sometimes, mostly it's not. So you and I have done many, many non-quick fixes, right?
And I'm very pleased that you chose this subject site, may I say. No. It would have been at the end of the session before I found this out, or sometime. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's now all configured correctly, but obviously that's out of 95 because that quiz is out of 5 instead of 10. So I'll leave that with you to.
Actually, I can just see, I've just opened it up and I can see exactly what it's doing. Each quiz is out of 5 because there's 2 online quizzes, quiz 1 and quiz 2. And then the online quiz total is out of 10.
So we need another
Yeah.
test that's deployed. So when you deploy your next test, because obviously quiz 2 is not deployed, when it's deployed, it'll bring in a grade center column and you'll just do the same process again and move it around.
Yep. Cool.
So now if we check, we've done that. Only include columns as part of assessment.
That's really badly worded.
What's that
Basically,
one?
yeah, just make sure that in the cumulative mark, we're only adding in assessment items rather than all the columns.
Oh, we did that. That was great.
Yep. So I'll
and the external grade, which is the green tick.
So
very important.
This green tick, basically behind the scenes in the database, there's a lot of things that goes on. And part of that is the grade transfer at the end of the session that takes these grades and transfers them to Banner. So this green tick needs to be on cumulative mark. So at the start of session, it is there by default, but it is very easy to move it or change it. So it's called the external grade, set as external grade. So if for some reason cumulative mark column, gets deleted and needs to be recreated, the external grade mark will go onto a different column, but it needs to always be set to the cumulative mark. So it doesn't do anything from your point of view, but it needs to be there for a successful grade transfer. So just something to be aware of.
Okay. And the running total, Matt?
So there's an option if you go into any of the edit column information, there is an option here to.
It's probably in your totaling column, I think.
Yep. So in the cumulative mark and the calculated grade, and if it's a complex grade center and you've got a calculated column of some description, then it will have the option of calculate as a running total. Come on. And this should always be set to no. And the reason for this is that if that's not selected, and if assignment 1's out of 10 and you get 10 out of 10 and none of the other columns have any grades in them, then the calculated grade will be a high distinction, which is obviously not the case because the calculated grade is the grade at the end of the session after all assessments are complete. So it calculates basically as it goes, and it'll give a false grade here. So that option again. I picked the wrong one again. So that option is called calculate as running total, and always has to be set to no.
It's a bit tricky because it seems like you would set it to yes, but it is always no.
It's a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, it is a bit. And then we've got exam columns, and this is something that with COVID happening and we were doing online exams, the online exams create a column all by themselves when they're deployed, as do every other tool. And that was causing some confusion for a little while. Now DLT, DSA are doing exams from now on, so this might be something that will still cause confusion, I'm thinking, Matt.
So what happens in that scenario is because the subject outline is created and published, then it will create a sort of a dummy final exam column here. And then because of what Sharon just said with COVID and what possibly will happen in the future, an online exam will be created and it gets tacked on to the end. And that one needs to be used and not this final exam. So there was some confusion and people wouldn't scroll across and they didn't realise there was an online exam column at the end. So that one, in that scenario, the final exam here needs to be deleted, and then this one needs to be updated in the cumulative mark. So it adds up to 100.
Sometimes it needs, and Matt's just shown us an incident where this is the case. Sometimes the column needs to be deleted, but sometimes the exams might be out of 60 or 70, like as we just saw there. And that column is used to make a weighted column of the exam, and that column is still okay to be sitting in the cumulative mark, but at other times it just needs to be removed. So that's a case by case situation.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have everything in black and white, but obviously, yeah, different grade centres can have different scenarios with.
There's a fair bit of grey in the grade centre.
That's my life.
Yeah. So and that's it. Has anyone got any questions? Or issues that they've had?
No, but it's been very helpful. Thank you, Matt and Sharon.
That's good.
It's good. That's
if you
what we like to hear.
If you think of anything later on, yeah, no problems reaching out to us directly and yeah, letting us know.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Sharon. Very informative.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
So
Good to check in and see. There's always things to learn, isn't there?
always, Sue.
I was talking to Lachlan earlier today, and we should be having another one towards the end of session, a couple of weeks before end of session, on catching up about checking your grade centre again and ready for transfer at the end. And if you think we need additional sessions throughout the session, then let us know and we can organise those.
Yeah. So it was lovely to meet you all today, and thank you for coming. So I'm going to stop recording now.